This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 1.3.2b on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to state the main features used to place organisms into the different groups of arthropods in the animal kingdom. So let's take a look at the arthropod group. So the arthropods are a specific group within the animal kingdom that would be classified as an arthropod because they have an exoskeleton and they have jointed legs. That means their legs can bend. So we have four categories or four classes of arthropods that all of these organisms, what they have in common is an exoskeleton and jointed legs. These are broken up, like I said, into four groups. That is insects, crustaceans, myriapods, and arachnids. Typically, we can recognize some of these and may get confused by others because we have to look at specific features in order to put them into these four groups. So here are some well-known examples of each of these types of organisms. So we have got the ladybug, which is an insect because of certain features that it has. The crustaceans, for example, a crab. A myriapod is something like a centipede, and arachnids are spiders and scorpions. So let's just take a look at the different arthropod features that would put these organisms into their specific class. Now, typically what we can just visibly see without having to really touch the type of arthropod is to look at the number of legs that an organism has. So if we know it's an arthropod, it's got the exoskeleton and jointed legs, and we want to further classify it. If the organism has 3 pairs of legs, then we know it is an insect, and 3 pairs only, so that's a total of 6 legs. If it has 4 pairs of legs, that is 8 legs altogether, then it only can be an arachnid. If the organism has 5 or more pairs of legs, that is 10 plus legs, then it is a crustacean. And if it has 10 or more pairs of legs, that is 20 plus, then it is a myriapod. So if we're able to count the number of legs, then we can very easily put the organism into its correct class. Now, there are other features that we can look at. So, for example, insects' bodies are divided into 3 parts. Arachnids' bodies are divided into 2 parts. Same thing with crustaceans. So there you'd have to look at something else. And then myriapods have many segments. It's not really divided into parts. So while they tend to be a bit longer, it still could be something that you might not be able to tell the difference. We can look at antennae, and if they have wings, as you can see, some of them don't have those items, some of them do, having different number of pairs. So really the defining characteristic here would be the number of legs in order to identify the type of arthropod that you are looking at. Okay, finally, let's look at the animal kingdom sort of flow chart. And so we can see here the 2 categories that we have looked at are the vertebrate, which is there in like the orange color. So typically the phylum that these organisms are put into is something called chordata or the chordates, and then it's further broken down into a subphylum, which you honestly don't need to know, which then are the vertebrates. But typically we just say they're in the vertebrate phylum, and then there are 5 categories of classes within that we have already gone over. Humans would fall into the mammalian class. So as you can see, based on a number of features, such as the fact that our bodies are covered with hair, and yes, they are, it is. All organisms, male and female, have mammary glands. We have live birth and nurse young, typically for most mammals. So that is that line. We also looked at the arthropod phylum, and remember it is exoskeleton and jointed legs. And then that is now further broken down typically into 4 groups. Now this breaks it up into a little bit more that we're not really going to go into. You just need to know the 4 groups, which we talked about, which are the myriapods, that is centipedes and millipedes. We've got the insects. We've got the arachnids, which would be spiders and scorpions. And then we've got the crustaceans, which are things like crabs, lobster, and shrimp. So this is really the overview. You can see there's way more phylum in the animal kingdom than just the arthropods and the vertebrates. You've got different types of worms. And then we've got sea creatures, things like mollusks, which would be like your octopus and clams and different things. Starfish and sea urchin go into a phylum called echinoderms. Things like jellyfish go into something called cnidaria. And so what happens is each of these organisms in the phylum would have different characteristics that would then put them into that particular phylum. And then each phylum is broken down even further down the line so that we can get to the species level where we only have one organism in that level of taxonomy.